We're speaking to Coronation Street star Rob Mallard, aka Daniel Osborne, about the abuse that he's faced due to the medical condition that causes him to shake uncontrollably.
I'm delighted to say we're joined this morning by Coronation Street star Rob Mallard. Now, he has a condition that affects over 1 million people in the UK, an essential tremor. Rob, thanks so much for coming on Morning Live this morning to talk about this. When did you first notice your tremor, and when was it diagnosed?
Thank you for having me on. I was 14, and I noticed at school, and friends of mine noticed that I had a slight tremor in my left hand. So I went to the doctors. I did roughly, probably no longer than a year, but no quicker than that. Testing things, thyroid, brain scans, because they really weren't sure what it was. And then came back, said, you've got essential tremor. There's nothing we can do for you. Come back if your symptoms get worse, and we'll try and give you medication to help control them.
But at 14, that's quite a thing to be diagnosed with, because presumably that's the age you're becoming conscious of yourself.
It was, but it wasn't then that I realised that it was... I didn't... Because they told me there was nothing I could do about it. I just put it to the back of my mind and tried to forget about it. It wasn't until I got, like, later into my early 20s when it progressed and it started to get worse that I thought I should really look into this. And that was when I really got the full scope of the fact that it could be quite degenerative over time.
But obviously, being an actor, this has got an impact on what you do. How has it affected your career?
Well, I had an audition. Before I did Coronation Street, I did a couple of episodes of Emmerdale. And in the audition process for that, my agent rang me up and said, strange one, they really like you, they'd like to offer you the part, but they thought you were very nervous and they're a bit worried about how that will work when you're on set. So at that point, nobody knew what I had, so I had to come out to my agent, who then explained it to the casting at Emmerdale. And then they said, has he got coping strategies? I said, yes, absolutely. It's just because of this being a high-pressure situation, the audition, that's why. And so they gave me the job, and then that was what led to Coronation Street. So it almost cut me off at that point, yeah. So if I hadn't have been honest about it, then I might not have got the job, yeah.
And then on top of that, there were some messages, weren't there, on social media that, to say the least, weren't very nice.
Yeah. So
coping with that as well.
Yeah, I went on to live TV to talk about Coronation Street, I think it was, and got a massive rush of adrenaline from the live TV aspect of it, and just started shaking. I had longer hair at the time as well, so I had a quiff, and it was just all you could see. When I watched it back, all you could see was the hair shaking. And then, within minutes of me coming off, people on social media were speculating that I was drunk, that I was withdrawing from something, that I had an issue. So then I was in this position where I went, right, I've been hiding this because I thought it was going to stop me from getting work. Whereas now, because I've not been honest about it, the assumptions are getting even worse. So I've got to make a choice here, and I've got to come... And so I came back and said, this is what it is. It's an essential tremor. It's more common than you think. People think it's an older person thing. And yeah, just found that being honest about it has ended up being the best policy.
But, I mean, you wouldn't notice anything, like sitting here and hanging out with you wouldn't notice anything. When does it sort of manifest or show? So
it's an active tremor. So with Parkinson's, that's a passive tremor. So someone, even if they're just sat in a chair, you'll see them shaking. With an essential tremor, active tremors, so right now you can't see anything, but when I pick this up...
Oh, right. Yeah.
Right.
That's how it works. So it's as soon as you engage the body to do something. So picking drinks up, clutch foot on a hill, that can be difficult.
Texting on set?
Well, on screen. Like now there's a massive trend on soaps of characters texting each other all the time, and then they have to get close-ups on it. And that's the hardest thing to do, because they have to hold it usually about 10 seconds so that people can get a good read of what's on the phone. I can't hold my hands still for that amount of time. So we have to come up with loads of little tricks, like zooming in really, really close, and I'll rest my hands on something.
All right.
And then they'll film it that way. I think they even want to use somebody else's hands. Which
you have a hand model?
I have a hand double. Cool. I have a hand double, made it.
But Rob, you mentioned Parkinson's. Dr. Oscar, presumably that's something that people maybe think is what's going on if they have this tremor, is it?
Yeah, I think it's really powerful to hear your story, Rob, because it's common to so many people, and as soon as people notice tremor, they understandably get very worried because you associate it with a lot of, very, very severe, potentially, neurological disorders. And, essential tremor can be one of those as well. It can have big impact on people's everyday life. Actually, Parkinson's disease is much less common. So essential tremor is about 8 to 10 times more common than Parkinson's disease. And it affects over 1 million people in the UK living with the condition. So it's something that we see a lot of. But as you were saying, it can be difficult to diagnose. They're the classic things. So, yeah, when you're trying to do something, that active motion, that's when the tremor comes on, rather than the resting tremor that you see typically in Parkinson's disease. But particularly in the early stages, when things are subtle, it can be quite difficult. And these things aren't something that you can do an instant test and get an answer as a doctor to say that's definitely what it is. So I'd always encourage anybody, if they've noticed a new tremor, of course, if you've had loads of coffee one morning, then having a little bit of tremor for a few seconds can be normal. But if you're getting a persisting tremor, then do go and talk to your GP about it, because it's something that we should be helping to investigate for you. And there are potential treatments for all of those sorts of conditions.
Does it run in the family, Rob?
Yeah, it is. It's familial. So 60% chance of having it if there's somebody else in your family that's got it. I've got an official diagnosis. My mum doesn't have an official diagnosis, but she does have a tremor. And other members of my family, as they've gotten older, it's developed there as well. So, yeah, it can run in families. Yeah.
I mean, Rob mentioned some coping strategies. Dr. Oscar, are there treatments out there?
There are, and it's important because, as you've found in your job, but you were also saying earlier to me that you used to work as a waiter and you'd had some problems there.
Oh, God, yeah. So carrying plates and stuff. 3 plates here, 2 plates there, and they'd all be rattling together, and other waiters would run over and be like, "Do you need a hand with that?" I'd be like, "No, I've got it," because I understood it's my tremor, so I knew what I could cope with and what I couldn't. There was a couple of times when there might have been a few spills on customers. We got over it.
But this is common, and it really affects people's everyday life. So there are things that we can do to help. And stopping anxiety, reducing your stress levels can be helpful. Reducing caffeine can be really, really useful. Medications, and I know you've tried some in the past, so we can use beta blockers to help suppress some of those symptoms, but they do come with side effects, and they're not always perfect for people. There are more modern treatments as well, so you can, in more extreme situations, have surgery using something called a deep brain stimulator, which is like a little electrode that goes into the centre of the brain where the tremors are thought to originate from and can help settle it. That's obviously a very invasive thing to happen. Over the last couple of years has become available on the NHS something called MR, as in an MRI scan, guided focused ultrasound, which is really clever technology where they can use ultrasound waves to fire them into the brain. It doesn't affect the tissue as it passes through because it's a single wave, but where all the waves converge in the brain, you can get heat and burn away the little area focus that's causing that short circuit and causing the tremor. But it's millimetre precision. If you go a millimetre or 2 the other way, then you can cause significant problems. So that is available in a handful of places across the UK. So again, if you're suffering, go and speak to somebody. You might need to go and see a neurologist to have some more tests.
What do you make of that, Rob? Or you know how to manage it now, and that's how you get it?
Yeah, so I'd like on set would use relaxation techniques. So like deep breathing exercises, repeating the action of whatever prop I have to use over and over and over and over again until it becomes smooth. I also found that keeping actions fluid, this might be too specific, but say like if I'm having to drink in the pub, if I just pick the pint straight up and tried to drink it, you'd see the tremor. Whereas if I picked it up slowly and sort of moved it here and then moved it here, and if you keep motion in your movements, it just sort of takes the edge off the tremor.
There's plenty of pints on Coronation Street as well.
There's lots of them, yeah. Well, that's the thing as well, yeah. Like you can, with this condition, a lot of people do find that it goes or it gets a lot easier with a drink. But then you're in between a rock and a hard place, and you can't. No one would recommend alcohol as a long-term solution. So, like you say, go to your doctor or go to the National Tremor Foundation website, which is the charity that I'm a patron of now. All the information on there. We do online support groups called Movers and Shakers. They meet up virtually, and we do a couple of meetups each year in person. So there's a community of people out there. Yeah, you can all shake together.
Thank you.
That is a great name for a support group. Rob, thank you so much.
Thank you.